Hey, folks, and welcome to another episode of Steelers Now Postgame. I'm Alan Saunders, live at Acrisure Stadium. The Pittsburgh Steelers 29-10 losers to the two-time Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs here on Christmas Day. Thanks for joining. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Appreciate you guys taking some time away from your family, or maybe, maybe I hope to be if you've had too much family now by this time of the evening, maybe I can provide some Steelers talk to take your mind off that uncle that's been bugging you or whatever. But certainly the football talk is not going to be particularly it's not going to be great. The Pittsburgh Steelers have now lost 3 games in a row. They have fallen out of first place in the AFC North. Their defense has given up 90 points over the last 3 games. They have continual issues that they can't seem to solve when it comes to communicating on defense, to covering tight ends, to getting turnovers, which was one of the strengths of this team coming into this stretch and has not been. Things are bad in Steelers land right now. We're going to talk about it. Of course, always welcome your comments. Bring them in. That's a big part of what we do here on the postgame show, and we'll get to them in a little bit. I want to start with this game against the Chiefs. And I really think very much like last week, you can kind of pinpoint. It's not that hard to see how the Steelers lose this game. The defense doesn't show up in the first quarter. 2 straight hot knife through butter situations. 2 straight long touchdown drives, easy touchdowns. I thought the Steelers made a mistake in starting James Pierre ahead of Corey Trice. I said so when they did it last week, and they came back and did it again. I think Corey Trice is the better player. I don't understand it. James Pierre victimized for that second touchdown to Justin Watson. He had just beaten Dante Jackson for a big play as well. They got Corey Trice in there after that. They did make some adjustments, but man, as Cam Hayward said, you can't spot teams 2 touchdowns, and that's exactly what they did at the beginning of this game. The defense figured it out, though, and the offense, after just a terrible turnover by Russell Wilson on their 3rd drive, and I know that Nate Burleson went on TV and talked about how George Pickens is supposed to run a different route, and Russ said he was expecting George to run a different route. And look, if you're going to give out 100 percentage points of who's to blame for that interception, 99.995 of them are on a 13-year vet throwing into triple coverage while he had 3 guys open on the right side of the field on 2nd and 14. It's not like this was some make-or-break play. Dump it off to Jaylen Warren. That would have been better than that. Just a horrible, non-competitive play by Russell Wilson, one of many from him in this game. That's another trend that continues as he turned the ball over twice against the Baltimore Ravens, turned it over again today, put the ball on the ground another time and was lucky to get it back. Pat Freiermuth fumbled. The Steelers are now 2-14 and going back to the start of the 2022 season when they fail to win the turnover battle. They are not going to get it done if they don't do that. And Patrick Mahomes is not going to give you very many. An experienced guy who's playing mostly because of his knowledge, his instinct, his ability to get the offense, operated correctly and things like that. Russell Wilson can't be put the ball in danger. He just can't. He can't make those mistakes. 2 weeks in a row, he's really cost this offense, and that's not good. But the turnovers, a slow start from the defense combined with what has now just become the usual slow start from the offense. I don't even know that it even mentions warranting at this point, but that's been a continual thing. The Steelers get down 13-0 quickly. They find a way to kind of hang in there. The defense tightens up. The offense can't do much. The offensive line, there was hope. I had said this at the beginning of the year. I hoped that with the young offensive line, that early season schedule being so light would give them a chance to come together, grow as a unit, and maybe by the time that the Steelers got to this point in the schedule, they would have an offensive line that they could depend on. It is very clear they do not. As the Chiefs came into this game tied for 19th in the league in sacks, they're missing their best defensive player, Chris Jones, on the defensive line. Russell Wilson sacked 5 times. Part of that was he's got to get rid of the freaking football, but it was just not a good day for the Steelers offensive line in pass protection. They run block very well. 2 games in a row, the Steelers ran the ball well. That is their identity on offense. That is what they want to do. Jaylen Warren looks healthy. He's running the best he has all season. Najee Harris still playing very well these last 2 weeks. He went over 1,000 yards for the 4th time in his career. But the Steelers unable to really use that running game because they're trailing because they start so slowly. And that has been a consistent and persistent thing for them. They just cannot find a way around. So you add up the continual slow starts on offense, throw in a slow start on defense, throw in 2 bad turnovers, throw in no turnovers from the Steelers defense. You have a recipe for a not particularly competitive loss that they would probably lose to almost any team, let alone the Kansas City Chiefs, who, by the way, I think are playing some of their best football of the year. And they are the best team in the NFL and in the AFC, even though people aren't talking about them like they are. Only crazy people want to see the Kansas City Chiefs on their schedule right now. So that's where I am with this game. I'm going to go quickly into the bigger picture here of this 3-game losing streak because I think that's worth talking about as well. I said when the schedule came out in May that these 3 games were scheduled losses. There are teams that are better than the Steelers. There are teams that are better than Steelers that involved 2 of the 3 on the road. There are teams that are better than the Steelers that involved a condensed schedule with less time for recovery. It was not conducive to them winning those games. At no point from May 8th until today that I think the Steelers were going to win any of these 3 games. I don't think anybody should have. I don't think it's a particularly good sign that it was 3 non-competitive losses, certainly. But I don't really think it tells us very much about the Pittsburgh Steelers that we shouldn't have already known. I know some of you were true believers. I know because I was arguing with you all summer about how the Steelers weren't Super Bowl contenders and blah, 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 blah. But they're not. They haven't been. They're a good team. They're not bad. They're not even mediocre. They're a good team, but they are not on the same level as the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Eagles. We'll throw in the Lions in that group and the Buffalo Bills. There's no shame in being a 6-8 team in the National Football League, especially when you have a young core like the Steelers do. They are a rebuilding team. They have been that for some time. This was not the year that they were pushing all their chips into the center. They did make some moves to be a little bit more aggressive. I think they're trying to end that playoff streak. I think that has been a big monkey on the back. I think it's kind of irrelevant, but I think they've felt the anger of the fan base in that regard, and I think that remains the goal for this season, to go out there and win a playoff game, and it's certainly still on the table. The Houston Texans, last time I checked, were rolling over and tunneling under the field against the Baltimore Ravens, so certainly far from out of the question that the Steelers can win a playoff game this year, and heck, you never know what happens when you win one. I do think how they handle the adversity of this 3-game losing streak will tell me more about this team than the fact that they had it. I was expecting them to have it. I would have been shocked if they didn't. But it's one thing to say on paper these teams are better than the Steelers. It's another to actually have it happen to you. And how the Steelers handle this losing streak and recover from it over the next 2 games, I think will tell us a lot about where they stand in terms of the leadership in this locker room, the coaching staff, and if they've got the right pieces, right people pulling the strings. It's clear that they don't have enough talent in a lot of areas. I love what Omar Khan's done in 2 years as the team's general manager, but he has a lot of work left to do. There are no shortage of draft needs that have revealed themselves over the course of the first 17 weeks of this season. But I think the trajectory is strong. I think they're going to be challenged to prove it here, though. They have to find a way to get this team right to get into the playoffs, and I think they should. They're in a position where I think they should be expected to win a playoff game, but they're going to have to do it. So that's where I am on the loss, on the 3-game streak. Let's dive into the comments, which are always so lively after a loss, and I appreciate that so much. Let's see if we can find Richard Hunt. Love the show. Can we at least narrow it down to who this person is? Well, I think so. A lot of people are referring to the comments after the game from guys like Alex Highsmith, Patrick Queen, about maybe people not having enough want to, people not getting the message. Look, I don't think it's one person, but I think it's not hard to see where the issues are in this defense. It's not T.J. Watt and Alex Highsmith. I'll tell you that. It's not Cam Hayward and Keanu Benton. I'll tell you that. It's been in the secondary. That's been where the issues have been, the communication issues. I mean, I'd love to go back and look at the film just to count how many times you go look at the tape and you see 2 Steelers defensive backs with their arms out going like this, staring at one another this season. That's got to be up into the double digits now. It's just not, for whatever reason, it's clear that that's the part of that's all falling apart. And so, I don't know that it's one guy, but it's certainly one unit. I mean, and I think it's fair to say that that's probably the least talented unit on the Steelers and has been banged up a lot. Dante Jackson hasn't been his best, dealing with an injury. Joey Porter Jr. not out there today. Deshaun Elliott, his first game back, I thought was fine, but probably not as good as he has been. So that plays a part in it as well. But I think it's pretty clear where the fingers are being pointed, at least positionally. And I'm not sure that it's one guy, but it's clear that that's where those breakdowns are happening. Beard Beard says we suck. They don't. They don't suck. They're a good team. They're better than 26 teams in the NFL. And I think they're not only a good team, but they're a good team on a good trajectory. They're just not yet as good as these last three teams that they've played. And I think that was probably obvious from the beginning, but certainly is obvious now. David, what's the deal with the defense? Is it TA? Honestly, way more concerning than anything on offense with the money on that side of the ball. Yeah, I mean, I think the lesson here is probably more don't spend that much money on defense than it is what's the problem with any of the individual pieces of the defense. I don't think the Steelers are playing poorly on defense in general. There's just too many hero ball plays. There's too many miscommunications. And I thought they cleaned up a lot. I thought they were much better in this game than they were last week. They cleaned up the missed tackles. Thought the communication problems were minimized. But they're playing a lot more dynamic offense than they were last week, too. I mean, the Ravens are one thing. The Chiefs are a whole nother animal. Also, when you're playing from behind the entire game, you make every team look good. It is really hard to look your best when you are literally trailing from 3 minutes into the game on. That's just not a recipe for playing winning football. I don't understand. Now, the defense has not had that problem all year in terms of starting, super slowly, but the offense has, and I don't know what needs to change there. Something does for sure. Joey Jr. says the Steelers ruined my Christmas. Netflix ruined mine, so we're in the same boat there, Joey. Shout out to Roger Goodell's billions, though. Shinsky says this team looks like the Bears. My brother, you have not watched enough Bears football if you think this team looks anything like the Bears. Gino, communications this far into the season is disappointing. And took the words right out of Deshaun Elliott's mouth. It is disappointing. It's unnecessary. It's disappointing. It's not all communication. A lot of things that get pointed out to communication are not really communication. It's just dudes doing what they want instead of what they're supposed to. What they think they should do instead of what they're supposed to be doing, or what they think they should do instead of what the guy next to them is expected them to be doing. It's not just miscommunication, but that is certainly a miscommunication. If they start Fields to see if he's a bridge quarterback for next year, I would be extremely surprised if we see Justin Fields in any capacity throwing the football. He's pretty injured. He didn't practice at all last week. Even if he was able to dress, I would not consider you're not going to get any look at what Justin Fields is right now. That's his health is not good enough to warrant him playing. Even if this game was irrelevant, and it's not, the Steelers can still win the AFC North if they beat the Bengals and the Ravens lose to the Browns. But even if this game was irrelevant, I don't think you would see Justin Fields start in it. Maybe Kyle Allen, but not Justin Fields. K. Mike says there must be a lot of people playing hurt that should not be playing. I know Pat Freiermuth was playing hurt. I don't know that. I mean, Dante Jackson's been playing hurt, but I have a hard time saying those guys shouldn't be playing. The Steelers have a dearth of pass-catching weapons on offense. They were already without Joey Porter Jr. Sometimes guys got to play hurt. That's just the way the NFL goes. The offensive line was horrible. Really, I think Smitty and I talked about it on Friday about guys hitting the wall. I think those young center to right tackle guys are slowing down, man. I don't see the same fire burst that we saw, although the run game is still good, but they're getting beaten up in the pass game, and I think Russ is feeling it in a bad way. 2 weeks in a row, I thought he looked harried in the pocket, didn't look confident, wasn't able to keep his eyes down the field. It's a bad combination. Why are there so many holes in the middle? Is it PQ or the safeties? Well, yeah, I mean, it's mostly the safeties and the corners. I don't think it's mostly PQ. PQ, it's really hard for PQ to miscommunicate. He is the origin of the communications. So it's not going to be him that's in the wrong spot. You can pretty much bet it. Steelers versus Texans in the first round. Who will win that one? I mean, I don't know that it will be. They got to beat the Bengals to get there. But I would like the Steelers in that matchup right now. Russ was washed before he went to dunk. No, I mean, look, Russ is not the guy he was before. I think we all knew that. Russ is still a perfectly acceptable NFL quarterback. He's not Lamar Jackson, but I mean, you don't need that. Look, Jalen Hurts does not make otherworldly plays all day long. He's a really good quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles. Jared Goff is practically pedestrian, and the Detroit Lions are the best team in the NFL. There's no reason that the Steelers can't win with a quarterback like Russell Wilson, but the offensive line has to play better, and they've got to figure out why they can't start the game well. And then Russ needs to be better in these last two games, but I think Russ will be. He has been. And look, I mean, people are allowed to have bad games. I don't expect that they're going to continue forever for Russell Wilson. Steelers have 10 days. Tomlin is good on long weeks. Hey, some optimism. Sam Gale's been into the eggnog. Some optimism. I agree. Also, I think the Bengals will probably be eliminated this week. And if that's the case, I don't think there's any chance that T. Higgins and Jamar Chase are going to set foot on the field. So, or maybe even not even come to Pittsburgh. I like the Steelers' chances a lot in Cincinnati, but yeah, for sure. Cam Sutton shouldn't be covering Worthy. I agree with that, Sam. I don't like that matchup. The problem is when you put him in the slot, the Steelers just do not have a cornerback without Joey Porter that you can really put on Xavier Worthy and say, okay, that's your guy. Follow him around. Dante Jackson, I guess, he got cooked by Justin Watson today. He's clearly not 100%, even though he is theoretically fast enough to do it. They just don't have that guy. And so you got to play zone. You got to find a way to fit it together. And, despite the Steelers having the most expensive defense, they do not have the best defense. And I think that's, again, telling and a reason to not be spending all that money. I don't think Micah Fitzpatrick's playing very well this year, and he's earning a heck of a lot. TJ Watt is still really good, but he is not playing like the best defensive player in football right now. He's also hurt. Cam Hayward's been great and a bargain. I'm not sure Patrick Queen has been what I'd call a bargain. He's been good. He's been, I think, a much needed addition to the locker room. But they paid a lot of money for him. I'm not sure. There's just too many guys on that defense that are not quite living up to the payday to justify it being what it is in terms of the investment on that side of the football. What can this team do next year in order to be considered the true contenders and not pretenders? This is a boil it down to the real essence of the question. How much time we got here? From, and I'm going to, Michaela, is that Michaela Stanley? Yeah, I'm going to guess that's Michaela. Man, it's going to take another really good offseason from Omar Khan. They need to add 2 playmaking wide receivers. They need to, the offensive linemen need to get better. I think they will. I think they have the right guys on the offensive line, but they have to invest in them. Those guys have to get better. They need to get Troy Fautanu healthy and get him into the lineup. They've got to figure out something at running back because I don't think Najee Harris is coming back. And they've got to find a way to continue to turn over the defense and get younger. Cornerback seems like a real big area of need. But they also, I think Cam and Larry and Mon Adams are playing fine right now, but those guys are part of the future, or part of the present, but not part of the future. So, Omar's got a big to-do list next offseason. I'm not necessarily and what's going to happen to quarterback? I would expect Russell Wilson to be back. I don't know what's going to happen around him. But again, they don't really have a future plan there either. So I think Omar has a long to-do list. This is not an overwhelmingly talented football team, but he also has a good amount of cap space next year and some pretty decent draft capital coming his way. So we'll see what he's able to do. I think he's done a nice job of building to the draft so far. Tom with if they lose to the Bengals, that will be a really whatever optimism we had from Sam. It's just out the window with Tom here. Alan, do you think Pat Meyer should stay as coach next year? From Mr. Mushroom. I'm fairly ambivalent about Pat Meyer. I believe his contract is up. I think it is certainly possible that they could find an upgrade on him. I don't think just any old coach would be that. I think Pat Meyer is pretty much, average NFL offensive line coach. He's not what Mike Munchak was when he was here years ago. He's not some kind of genius savant that's, the best in the business. I think the Steelers as an organization have a goal to be the best in the business, but I don't think that's been reflected in their budget for assistant coaches recently. So I don't know what they're going to do. I don't think they should get rid of them just to get rid of them. I think there could be a plan in place that looks better, though. I would have to see it. I want to fight back against this narrative here from Mike Irwin. Like, saying that this season and losing these 3 games is anything like the end of last season, where they lost 2 home games to 2-10 teams, is just such absolute disingenuous horse shit. Like, if this is the only thing you can do for analysis, you don't even know anything about football. You're just default to blaming the head coach for absolutely everything that happens. Yes, losing to 2-10 teams at home last year, absolutely Mike Tomlin deserved excoriated for that, and he was. This is complete. They lost 2 road games and a home game to the team that has a top 5 run in the NFL history and 2 road games against Super Bowl contenders. Like, those are not the same things, guys. They're not the same things. They're not even close. Stop trying to lump them together. It just makes you look stupid. Should the Steelers sit all their starters against the Bengals to get healthy for the playoff run? No, because if the Browns beat the Ravens, they can still get in the playoffs. Patrick Queen needs to give up his green dot. Nobody else plays the whole game. It has to be Patrick Queen. How does Terrell Austin keep his DC job? That's a question. I don't know what his contract status is. Again, I don't think Terrell Austin is the problem with this defense. Are there better defensive coordinators? Yeah. Will the Steelers go find one of those? I don't know. Mike Tomlin has a pretty good-sized influence on the defense. I don't think young coaches who aspire to be head coaches want to be in that situation. I think it's one of the reasons why it was never even discussed between Brian Flores and the Steelers about staying. He wanted to go somewhere where he could be the defensive coordinator for an offensive head coach, because that's the only way as a young defensive coach you can become a head coach again. It's like Eric Bieniemy in Kansas City. If you are the offensive coordinator of an offensive genius head coach, the world is just going to assume that it's him, not you. Flores had to go do it on his own. He understood that. And so, I don't know that it is and that combined with, I don't think the Steelers pay all that well comparatively. I don't think it is the world's most attractive defensive coordinator job. I think they could, again, potentially find some upgrades, but I don't think that'd be bountiful or anything like that. No way the Ravens will lose to the Browns. Man, they already lost to them this year. Don't put anything past anything in the AFC North. There you go. Browns might wake up for this one. Who knows? Ravens were supposed to win the first time. There you go. Corey Patterson. How serious is Joey Porter Jr.'s injury? Thanks in advance. Merry Christmas from the Verducci man. Joey, I would not expect him to play against the Bengals. I'll say maybe 50-50 for the wild card game. He has a PCL sprain in his right knee. That was a 2-week injury for Jaylen Warren, but he was very clearly not 100% in that 3rd week when he came back. So I don't know. We'll see. I'd say probably not against Cincinnati, though. O-line looks very bad. Yeah, we got lots of O-line. Jaylen Warren should be running back 1. I think Jaylen Warren is the better of the team's 2 running backs. I think also to be what you're saying, I guess depends on what you mean by RB1. I don't know that he is physically capable of being a Le'Veon bell cow type running back where you're giving him the ball 25 times a game over the course of an 18-week season. Like I worry physically about a guy with his stature and a very reckless running style that he would be, one, able to hold up physically, and two, if he would be as good given that bigger workload. It's like the baseball analogy, right? Like some guys are platoon guys because not because they're not good platoon guys, but because the more of them that play, the worse they would get. And so I think Najee Harris is a really, really good running back. I think the Steelers are not going to re-sign him. I think they've got to come up with something else. I think Jaylen Warren being the bigger half would be a perfectly okay arrangement if you want to go get a rookie like Ollie Gordon or Marion Hampton or Johnson from Iowa, something like that. Yeah, I think you're talking about next week. I mean, they're just going to keep rolling the ball. You're not going to make like some kind of drastic change going into week 18 in terms of benching Najee Harris, something like that. He's been fine, even if I think healthy Warren is the better of the two players. If they play KC again, they'll just run it back. Tomlin has hit his head on his ceiling. I don't think it's Tomlin's ceiling. Tomlin's won a Super Bowl before. Tomlin's been to 2 Super Bowls. Tomlin doesn't have a ceiling. This team has a ceiling. T. Higgins I like, but he's too injury prone. I think Mike Tomlin likes T. Higgins too, but Garrett Wilson, that's another good one. It's time for Justin Fields. Yeah, we covered that, man. Justin Fields is not healthy. Any NFL coach that loses 3 games in December deserves a criticism. I mean, that's just not the calendar doesn't matter. You lose 3. It's not any easier or harder to win the games in December than it is in October. It's the same game. It's just like it's not any easier or harder to win a playoff game than it is a regular season game. The quality of the opponent matters. If the Steelers had played these 3 games week 1, 2, and 3, I don't think the results would have been one bit different than in December. It's just that those teams are better. Actually, probably would have been worse because they didn't have Russell Wilson then. How's Cam Hayward doing? If you want a piece of good news, Cam Hayward told me after the game he's fine. So that is a piece of good news. What is the author? I love the Arthur Smith obsession with Cordell Patterson. I'll be honest. I don't mind Patterson running like 2 plays a game, but I don't think he's been very good as a kick returner these last couple of weeks. I think that's an area where the Steelers, given how important the kickoff return has become, probably an area where they should be looking to upgrade going into the offseason. Sign ETN when the fire sale starts. I don't hate that, but ETN and Warren are very similar backs. I would probably want someone a little bit bigger. I blame Omar for the offensive woes. Completely botched up our wide receiver room this year. Now, that is absolutely spot on. And, look, you can say that Omar has done a very good job and also say that Omar definitely botched the wide receiver position this year. Just like you can say that Russell Wilson has had a very good season, but also probably did more harm than good each of the last 2 weeks. Yeah, for sure. Overall, how worried am I at this moment? I mean, I'm not worried at all, but I don't really worry. So this is exactly where I expected. Actually, it's a little bit ahead of where I expected they'd be. I predicted they'd go 9-8 and win a playoff game. Looks like they're going to do no worse than 10-7 and win a playoff game. Might be 11-6 and win a playoff game. Might be 11-6 or 10-7 and lose a playoff game. But either way, they're right where I expected them to be. I think they're a better team than they were last year. I like the trajectory. I'm not worried at all, but I did not have high hopes for this team going far in the postseason this year. If you did have that, you should have been worried a long time ago, but certainly should be worried now. Let's get one more here. Doesn't Tomlin make most of the defensive calls? If so, defensive coordinator replacement wouldn't make that much of a difference. I don't think he's making most of the defensive calls, but he is very involved in the team's defense in general, in terms of the game plan and who's in the game and all that. I wouldn't say he's making most of the calls, but he's very involved in the defense for sure. Put Mahomes behind the Steelers' offensive line, and we haven't seen what we would do. That Kansas City offensive line is every bit as bad as the Steelers' offensive line. And in fact, it might be worse. It's actually in a worse situation because at least the Steelers' offensive line is young. The Chiefs' offensive line is just bad. But Mahomes is in the prime of his career, and Russ is 36. Like, Mahomes is running around, flipping the ball sideways, making plays on the run. The Steelers aren't going to get that from Russell Wilson. They need a better offensive line if they want to get that kind of production. Looks like we're not going to win the division. What about the playoffs? Who do you think is going to be our best matchup? I think it's going to be the Houston Texans, and I think that's a good matchup. But I don't think there's a bad matchup here. The Steelers have, they've beaten the Ravens. I think they can do that. I think Buffalo is the team you really don't want to play. I think they're probably of the teams that look to be in that first round, clearly the best of the three. But I wouldn't be afraid at all about going to Houston right now. They've not been playing very good football, even though they did rough up the Steelers last year. All right. That's all we got for tonight. Thank you guys so much for joining us on Christmas. I really appreciate that. I'm just really appreciative of the entire audience year-round, but thankful that you guys are taking time out of your holiday to spend some time with me and talk some ball. Back with more regular schedule tomorrow. Steelers are actually having availability tomorrow, so we will have more from the locker room. And, me and Smitty on the afternoon drive tomorrow. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, enjoy. Have a happy holiday. Merry Christmas. And we'll see you around.